everyone to the Health at Home Holiday Edition webinar series. Since it's 6:30, we're going to go ahead and get things going. Before we get started, I just want to ask that everyone make sure your microphones are muted to prevent any background noises, and just to make sure your camera remains off so we have a strong bandwidth throughout the presentation. Today is our last webinar of the Holiday Edition series. All of the webinars are being recorded, and you will be able to find these recordings along with the handouts on our Nutrition and Wellness state page, and I will put a link to that in the chat box momentarily. If you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and put those in the chat box, and I will keep an eye on that, and we can answer those questions at the end of the session. And we just ask that you please refrain from answering anything in the chat box just to make sure we're providing you with the most up-to-date and research-based info. And then towards the end of the presentation, I will put a link to the survey in the chat box. And once you complete that, you will automatically be directed to the handouts that go along with the session. And again, a recording will be made available tomorrow on our state page. And let me go ahead and put that in the chat box so you have it. There it is. Okay, and for those of you that may not know, the University of Illinois Extension is the flagship outreach effort of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We offer research-based educational programs to the residents of Illinois in all 102 counties and far beyond. My name is Kristen Bogdonis. I'm the Nutrition and Wellness Educator serving Henry, Mercer, Rock Island, and Stark up there in the northwest part of the state by Iowa. And our presenter tonight is Diane Reinhold, and I will let Diane introduce herself.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen. And again, I am very excited to be doing this presentation. I told my sister that I was going to do a presentation about making to-do lists. And she looked at me and said, of course you are, because I love to-do lists. So as Kristen mentioned, my name is Diane Reinhold. I'm a nutrition and wellness educator with the University of Illinois Extension, and I serve Joe Davis, Stevenson, and Winnebago counties. And that's in the tippy top corner, northwest corner of Illinois. And I really have a passion for chronic disease prevention and management programming and food safety. And believe it or not, learning to deal with holiday stress can ultimately improve our overall health and well-being. So, here we're going to have a program called Making a List and Checking It Twice. And really, we're going to be talking about ways that you can be aware of how stress impacts your health and wellness. And by making a to-do list, a checklist, it can help you set priorities, track your progress, as well as allow you to gain skills so you can better manage that stress that's in your life. So my first question is, and feel free, type your questions in the chat box and type your answers. I'm going to ask questions. Kristen, when people, put something in the chat box, just go ahead and give me a shout out, because my first question is, do you ever feel overwhelmed with the amount of work or the number of tasks that you have to complete? I know I do, and I suspect many of you do as well, and that's why you're here tonight. So creating a to-do list is a great way to get those tasks done, as well as help you deal with those feelings of being overwhelmed, especially when you're under pressure. Simply put, having a to-do list allows you to write down the tasks that need to be completed. They also help you set priorities and keep everything nice and organized. One of the key parts to being successful is being able to stay organized and move forward. Even if it's slowly, you're still moving forward. Having a to-do list also helps you manage those activities, especially those big activities. If the thought of carrying up 30 boxes of holiday decorations from your basement is really overwhelming, you can have your to-do list and break that down into smaller pieces, and that'll help you stay focused and be able to accomplish those tasks. Also, using a to-do list increases the likelihood that you're going to complete those tasks. And it provides motivation because there is nothing better than being able to cross whatever task you just completed off your list. And so a to-do list can help affirm your progress and give you that huge sense of accomplishment that most of us are looking for. Now, we all, if you're alive, you're going to be under some form of stress, and especially with the holidays. So maybe you worked really hard, you put up this beautiful Christmas tree out on, the walkway just outside your apartment door, and all of a sudden a wind came along and tipped it over. And you're like, oh my gosh, hopefully the Christmas bulbs didn't break, right? Well, having stress can cause within us an extra sense of anxiety. And anxiety is really our body's natural response to stress. It's a feeling of apprehension, and it can come from the fear of the unknown or just simply the unknown. Anxiety is going to feel differently to different people depending upon who you are and how you're experiencing it. The feelings can range anywhere from having butterflies in your stomach to having a racing heart. And you might even feel out of sorts and disconnected and having a disconnected feeling between your mind and your body. But there's really some physiological issues that can arise if you're feeling really anxious because of all the stress that you're feeling because of the holidays. You can have increased heart rate or increased breathing rate. You can have difficulty focusing and concentrating. You can eat too much or too little. You can feel restless, but you can also have difficulty sleeping, whether it's falling asleep or staying asleep. I don't know about you, but it's happened on more than one occasion when all of a sudden I wake up and I just feel so anxious. And one of the skills that I've developed to help me manage with my stress is I have a notebook, and then I just go and I write down all the things that are bothering me, typically things that I need to get done the next day. I write those things down, and believe it or not, I can fall back to sleep in a relatively shorter period of time versus if I just let them float around in my mind. And that's because stress can cause us to feel overwhelmed, and it can impact our cognitive ability. So like the way we think, it can cause us to feel forgetful, or it could make us seem easily confused, but it can also really affect our ability to concentrate. And if you're having difficulty with any of those issues, that's going to lead to a lot of problems because you become inefficient. And so when you have that to-do list, you're able to then focus on what needs to be done. And really having that to-do list is going to help you develop skills to cope with that stress. Stress management is something that's incredibly important. And one of the concepts within stress management is resilience. And resilience refers to how well you can deal with and bounce back from those difficult situations that come into your life. And everyone has different ideas of what's difficult. So maybe having to go to the grocery store, that could for some people be very overwhelming, especially if you're thinking about, all of those extra holiday shoppers and, what if they're out of almonds and you really need almonds for your recipe or pecans. So all of those just little things can add up. And so being able to be resilient is incredibly important when it comes to dealing with stress and handling pressure. Resilient people tend to maintain a more positive outlook and cope with stress much more effectively compared to those that haven't developed those skills. The nice thing about resilience is some people are just naturally gifted. They have that ability within their personalities. They already have resilience. But the nice thing for the rest of us, we can develop those skills. And when you are working to build your resilience, one of the first things you have to do is really believe that you can. You can overcome the obstacles. You can get all 30 of those boxes from the basement or the attic, and you can get them out and you can start decorating. It's also important to develop a strong social network. Having that network is going to be important because you can have others come alongside of you to help you process the stress that you're going through and help you stay on track and stay focused. Also, resilient people have a tendency to embrace change. Now, I was in a meeting today, and someone said, well, a lot of people don't like change. But in today's fast-paced world, I feel that most of us have to be very flexible and really ready to pivot and make those changes and embrace them, especially if we're going to be successful. The other aspect of being resilient is working to be optimistic. So changing the way that we think so that we can think in a much more positive manner. And being optimistic during challenging times like the holidays, it can be really difficult, especially if you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, or maybe you're not able to do your traditional activities because of this crazy COVID, right? But the nice thing is when you're working on becoming resilient, you're working on becoming optimistic, you're going to focus on positive outcomes, positive activities. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to ignore real problems that need to be addressed. What it really means is that you have the ability and that you understand that setbacks are going to occur. However, many of those setbacks are just temporary, and that you actually have the skills and ability to overcome the challenges. I was talking with a friend and she was really bummed that she can't get together with family for the holidays. And I said, yes, but just think about this. Next year, the time that you have together is going to be all the more precious and you're going to enjoy it all the more. And she's like, yeah, I didn't really think of it that way. Now, another reason to have a to-do list is because it can help us overcome procrastination. And procrastination is the act of delaying or putting off tasks until the last minute, or running it right up to the deadline. It's interesting when you look at procrastination, there are some issues that typically need to be addressed. So one of the issues is that there's this really big myth that contributes to procrastination. And it's that, I need to feel inspired to put up the holiday directions or decorations. I need to be inspired to do all of that holiday baking. But the reality is that inspiration may not come. And really, you just have to figure out how you can motivate yourself to be able to do that. Another common issue when you look at individuals that have issues with procrastination, they may be dealing with issues of depression or obsessive compulsive disorders. Maybe they struggle with issues of being indecisive, or they just want everything to be perfect. And so that kind of causes them to get stuck and they're not able to move forward. So having your to-do list, being able to break tasks down can help so that things are not so overwhelming, and it can help with your decision process. It can help with issues of needing everything to be perfect. But of course, some of those issues are medical issues that you need to talk with your healthcare provider. So if you're dealing with any of those issues, reach out to your healthcare provider and other professionals that can help you address those issues. The other thing is, we have to find our motivation. If you suffer from an issue that my mom sometimes has an issue with, I don't want to, you can't make me. And I'm like, okay, like my mom's in her 70s and I'm like, Mom, you just do it. Well, I don't want to. And I always tell her that's part of being an adult. You just have to do things you don't want to do. And then of course I get a good chuckle out of her and we move on with our conversation. But really it's important to find your why. Because again, sometimes that inspiration is not going to come. But it's important to understand that there's different types of motivation. We have extrinsic motivation, and that is a type of motivation that comes from outside factors. For example, maybe if you clean and decorate your house and it looks so cute and you invite friends over, then you get lots of praises. Or maybe you're the neighbor that has just these amazing holiday recipes and yummy treats that they make. And you just get all these accolades from baking, and people just love that. So that could be your motivation. It's really important to find your why. The other type of motivation, believe it or not, and I'm just like, I wish I was more like some of these people. They have this intrinsic motivator. They just have these internal factors that they're like, hey, I'm going to go run the reindeer dash, and that's going to be at 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve morning, and then I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z, and I'm just like, whoa. But their motivation comes somewhere deep within themselves. And it's really amazing. So if you struggle with procrastination, try and surround yourself with people that have that internal motivation, because maybe I always tell myself, well, maybe some of it will rub off on me. But really find your why. The other important aspect of your to-do list, sometimes I hear people say, well, to-do lists, they just don't work for me. And they have a real negative connotation associated with their to-do list. For example, my sister, who always rolls her eyes, and I'm like, hey, let's make a list. Then we know what we're going to do. And I like the list because it gives me an idea of what my expectations should be. However, she confided in me that she doesn't like to-do lists because they make her feel overwhelmed. When she looks at the list, she's just like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do and it's never ending. And it just creates more stress within her than really needs to be done. So I just encourage her to kind of work through that. Another issue people may find when they're creating their to-do list is that they end up mixing home tasks with work tasks. And for anyone that's working remotely, you may find that that's really kind of easy to do. So it's really important to create the right type of to-do list for the right job. And, I didn't realize that there's different types of to-do lists that are actually classified as different types. But when I was reading and researching information about being effective and dealing with stress and having, our to-do list, I was like, oh, I use a lot of those different types of to-do lists depending upon what I'm going to be doing. But really using a list helps us to be effective. It helps us to prioritize our tasks, and it really helps with time management. But again, you have to use the list, and you have to use the right list for the right task at hand. So type in, if you don't mind, please type in the chat box, why do you make to-do lists? Like, what do you get out of your to-do list? And then Kristen, if you see anyone typing something in there, you just give me a holler.
Will do.
All right. So, there are many benefits to having a to-do list. As I mentioned earlier, to-do lists can help you take back some of the control that you feel you may have lost, and it helps you to rein in some of the chaos as you're trying to get through the holiday season. Oh, I see lots of questions or responses coming in. Kristen, do you want to share some of those?
Sure. Let me scroll up a little bit because we're getting a lot of responses in here. So we have organization helps keep my mind organized, helps with time management, not forgetting to do important tasks. And it's good checking things off, awesome. Definitely.
Yes. And as we go through and talk about the different types of to-do lists, I like the one at the bottom here, so that you don't overlook or forget something. And our brains cannot hold and manage a lot of different things at once. And so writing your to-do list help you to categorize or put those tasks into different boxes. And again, it really helps us to break down those larger tasks so that we can really be successful in completing those tasks. So when it comes to categorizing our priorities or our different tasks, if you're like me, depending on the day, sometimes I'm just really tired to start my day off, and I have a whole list of different tasks that I need to do. But what I end up doing is, and this is what you're not supposed to do, um, I end up doing all of the small tasks. Because then I can say, like, oh, hey, it's noon and I've already crossed off 10 things that I needed to get done. But then by 12:30, when I'm getting back to work, I'm like, oh, I'm just worn out and I'm too tired to work on the big major projects. And so I keep telling myself this, but I'm just not good at it yet. I have to keep working because, our wellness journey is a journey and never ending process. But what the researchers recommend is that we complete that most important task first, and that we work on the urgent and the important tasks first. And that then will give us some relief when we're done. And then we can go ahead and work on the less urgent projects. And it's really important when we're trying to prioritize what tasks should we do first. Should we decorate first? Should we do our holiday baking? Should we go Christmas shopping? Should we wrap presents? Well, I guess I can't wrap presents until I do my Christmas shopping. Should I go in-person shopping? Should I order online? All of these different questions that can be swimming around in your head, but some things that you need to take into consideration is, the priority. Well, obviously you can't wrap presents until you purchase them. And so, that's kind of a priority. And then sequential things, well, I really can't do holiday baking until I go to the store and buy everything. And, today is Saturday morning and the grocery store is crazy. So should I maybe go Thursday night, And then, of course, the estimated amount of time. And, well, baking, I can't really bake everything in one day, but I could decorate in one day. Or so, again, figuring out all of these different considerations into your overarching plan. But really, it's important that when you are prioritizing, that you are realistic. You can't do everything all the time and you can't do it all at once. And it's important to be flexible because as time goes on and as life comes to be, our priorities change. And so working on the important and not the urgent is going to be something you're going to want to weave in to your priorities when you're addressing your tasks, because your not urgent but important tasks are going to have an impact on your long-term goals. So again, thinking back to all of the holiday things you have to do. And then on top of it, you're like, oh, and I'm supposed to go to the gym and I'm supposed to work out and I'm supposed to, lift weights 2 days a week. And I'm supposed to get 150 to 300 minutes of, moderate intensity physical activity. And how am I going to work all that in? But the thing that's important to remember is that should be a priority on your to-do list, because even though it is not urgent, it is important because it's going to have a long-term impact on your overall health and well-being. And so those are things to keep in mind. And so this was a really nice visual. It's called a quadrant to-do list. So when you're trying to prioritize, if you're a visual person, you might go ahead and make a general to-do list that has you just brainstorm all the things you have to do over the weekend. And then you can take those tasks and break them down into urgent, non-urgent, important, non-important. And then you can determine in what order you should do those. So this is going to help you with the prioritizing process. So something that's important and urgent. Oh, well, I have to pick up the kids from indoor soccer practice by 1 o'clock. And you're like, oh, it's 11:54. I better get a move on. So that's the other thing you have to keep in mind when you're creating and addressing your to-do list. You have to factor in time. Ask yourself, how long is it going to take to complete these tasks? And you have to be realistic. If you're not realistic, you're going to end up sabotaging your to-do list. And then we might end up back a few slides ago when I said, well, some people say to-do lists just don't work for me. Well, maybe they're not necessarily being realistic with the time that they have to complete those tasks. The other thing it's important to acknowledge is that you have to avoid wasting time. There's so many distractions. especially if you get sucked into social media, Facebook, Twitter, maybe you're Snapchatting, chatting with your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, or those impromptu phone calls. And you're like, well, I'm in the middle of baking. You take a phone call. If you're, really savvy and have a Bluetooth headset, you can put that on and maybe you can keep working unless you run the mixer and then the people can't hear you. And then you're like, oh no. The other thing that's important is stop multitasking. Some people like say, oh, I'm a great multitasker. However, research tells us that you are not effective when you are multitasking. So you may not necessarily be meeting those high tasks or those high standards that you have for yourself when you're multitasking. You're doing too many things and you're only doing them half-heartedly, and you're not, giving your all because you can't do multiple things at once. Another strategy is set a timer. Say, I'm going to work on baking on Saturday morning from 7 until 11, and then I'm going to take the kids to soccer practice, and then I'm going to come home, and then from 1:30 until 4:30 I'm going to decorate. So again, setting a timer, setting a designated amount of time for that activity to be done. And then also acknowledge that there could be a never-ending to-do list. So an endless list is never completed because you're constantly adding things. But this type of list is good and helpful because it's going to help you to remember things that you need to do. And it can get really long, but the nice thing is it contains everything. So you create an endless to-do list. Another type of to-do list is a finite list, meaning it has to be completed. So Christmas presents have to be wrapped by December 24th because Christmas Eve, you open gifts. And so having that finite to-do list is going to help motivate you. And typically those are going to be shorter lists and they're very specific. Our project to-do list, that is a type of finite to-do list. Like, oh, the roof is leaking, so I need to get that fixed before it starts raining, right? Before we get through a rainy season. And so your project is clearly defined and it has an end goal. So here we're talking about a lot of different types of lists. So you have your finite or your endless list, you have your finite list, you have your project to-do list, so you have your basic list. So your basic list is your catch-all. Again, that's kind of where you brainstorm all the things you have to do. A daily to-do list is something that, okay, these are things I need to do, today. So if you're starting with your kids and trying to teach them about to-do lists, you say like, okay, fix your bed, brush your teeth, and then they can check all of these different things off. So kind of, that chore chart is really teaching kids the skills to develop that mindset of having that to-do list. And then of course, having a prioritized to-do list. Say, okay, I have to, pay my utility bill by a certain date. Otherwise, electricity is going to get cut off, and that's going to be a problem because I'm having a house full of people for Hanukkah or some other type of holiday event. Also, it's important. We spoke briefly about the quadrant to-do list. Again, that's a really nice visual. And our quadrant to-do list is really a combination of that daily priority list and our prioritized to-do list. And it's an excellent visual for individuals trying to address that. And then of course we have an ABC list. And this is a combination of all the different lists. And you take those lists and then you can, let's say your basic list or your daily list, and then you can give them letters to help prioritize them. Like A would be the highest priority, C would be of lower importance. It's really important when you have your to-do list to, again, set realistic goals, stay focused on your goals. It helps you to track your progress. It can also give you insight into obstacles. Again, if you all of a sudden find yourself, oh, I just spent, 2 hours on Saturday talking to different people on the phone. And so that could be an obstacle that gets in the way of completing your task. So you can find strategies and develop strategies to help you navigate those obstacles. And then also having a to-do list and tracking those activities gives you a positive outlook because you can say, hey, I did all of these things. I totally rock. So the power behind the list is really you. You are the magic. You're what makes it happen. And having those tasks to complete really are milestones on the goal, your wellness journey, and they can help you reach your goals, whether it's decorating for the holidays, whether it's eating healthy, increasing fruits and vegetables, getting physical activity in. But it's also going to give you that visual reminder of your success. It's going to be structured and detailed, and it's going to allow you to focus on productivity, and it's going to allow you to be persistent because maybe your daily activities, you didn't get everything done, you just moved the stuff you didn't finish on Tuesday onto your Wednesday list. So it gives you that ability to be persistent. So at this time, Kristen, do we have any questions? I know it's right up at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. That was a lot of good information you shared. We did have one question. Someone is asking about templates, and if you have any templates of the different types of lists that you shared that you could provide to listeners today.
I do have some templates. I wasn't planning on sharing, but I can share those. For those that want that template, in the, if you want to type your email address in the chat box, I will get those templates sent out and share those with you. They're from another agency, so I just have to make sure I cite my source with that.
All right, thank you. And that is actually, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to thank everyone for attending our series. It's been great. I got to listen to Lisa, Susan, and Mary Liz, and they just had phenomenal lessons that they taught earlier in December. And I'm just excited that you guys were all able to join us. And thank you for sticking with me. Fortunately, I went over a little bit. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone.
And I just wanted to let everyone know I am putting a link to the survey in the chat box right now. And again, once you complete the survey, it will automatically redirect you to those handouts. There it is.
So I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. And thank you again so much for joining us. And here's to looking to a bright and vibrant 2021.
Happy holidays and Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of Illinois American Water, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Part of our commitment to having reliable and clean water available for future generations means helping our customers understand how to use water wisely. Thank you for your commitment to learning more today and how to join us in preserving this precious resource. Also, a big thank you to University of Illinois Extension for partnering with us on this educational series. We hope you find some helpful information to make your holidays flow better this winter.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eliana Brown, Extension Water Quality and Stormwater Specialist. I will be moderating for our speaker today. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared to University of Illinois Extension's YouTube page at go.illinois.edu/cleanwaterconservation. The link is in the chat box. Please allow time for processing and closed captioning. We'll follow up with an email when the videos post. Closed captioning is enabled today. You can control whether you see the captioning in the Zoom control bar on your screen. If you have content questions, we ask that you wait to the end and that the speaker's email will be provided. We have a 1-minute feedback survey that we ask you to take at the end of today's presentation. This helps us make continuous improvements that better serve you. We'll put that link in the chat box now, so you'll have it when the webinar is done. Now I'll introduce our speaker, Sarah Zach is a pollution prevention specialist with University of Illinois Extension and Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. She develops and conducts extension and outreach activities related to the prevention of aquatic pollution, raising awareness of the impacts of pharmaceuticals and personal care products, microplastics, and other contaminants of emerging concern. Since joining us in 2011, Sarah has received multiple awards, including the Apex Award for Publication Excellence and the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network Early Career Award. Sarah has a dual bachelor's in zoology and biological conservation from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a master's in biology from Loyola University Chicago. And now I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Eliana. That was a very kind introduction. As Eliana said, my name is Sarah Zach, and today we're going to talk about some tips for a happy water holiday. This is the third webinar in a series of 4 water conservation webinars, and we're really honored to partner with Illinois American Water. And we're really hoping that this helps all of us work together towards good stewardship of our water resources. So for the next 25 or 30 minutes or so, we're going to explore some water-wise practices that can help make your winter and your holidays go a little bit smoother. Okay. What's going on here? There we go. So before we start talking about water-wise actions, it's important to understand why our actions at home might be having a bigger impact than we realize. This is a graphic that illustrates some common things that homeowners do to care for their homes. In this case, we're looking at lawn care, but the principle is really the same, and it's going to illustrate my point really well. So you can see in this picture, you've got someone who is spraying fertilizer or pesticide, someone mowing their lawn and creating grass clippings, someone watering. You've got leaves in the sewer, water running off of the roof and down into the sewer, just a variety of sort of pretty common things that we all do. So a watershed is an area of land that acts like a funnel, and it channels water into the nearest body of water. So your backyard is part of a watershed. Your sewers may drain directly to a body of water, or they may drain to a treatment plant that then drains to a body of water. And so those are all a part of a watershed. The water you use in your homes goes to a treatment plant that again discharges into a watershed. Or if you have a septic system, discharges into land that is also part of a watershed. I think I belabored the point a little bit. But the idea here is that the things that we do in our homes have an impact on our water resources because all of that water ends up in a river or a lake or a stream somewhere. So you can find your watershed if you're interested by going to mywaterway.epa.gov. So if we move up in scale, we can see here a map of a large river watershed. In this case, we've got the Illinois River. And it's a good example because it kind of underscores the unexpected boundaries that watersheds create. This river flows all the way from the Chicago area down into the Mississippi River. And in the map of that, you can see these different colored areas are all of the sub-watersheds that comprise that Illinois River watershed. So there's rivers in Lemoyne and Spoon and Fox and Des Plaines that all drain into the Illinois River. So it just moves from one to the next. And then you can see in this map of Illinois, this large green area here is the Illinois River watershed that we're looking at on the left. And so you can see how our whole state is comprised of just a series of watersheds, and all the water within those watersheds ends up in essentially one of two places, the Mississippi River or Lake Michigan. And then that Mississippi River ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's why it's so important to understand the watershed that your home resides in, but also I think it underscores the idea that essentially your watershed is also our watershed because everything is connected. So, as water flows through watersheds on its journey to the Gulf of Mexico or to Lake Michigan, there are many ways that we alter the quality and the quantity of the water. These alterations often can impair the healthy functions of our ecosystems that are in freshwaters and marine ecosystems as well. And there have been some recent US Environmental Protection Agency assessments that have demonstrated this. So just a few facts here. 35% of lakes in the United States have some sort of nutrient pollution, some combination of nitrogen and phosphorus, which can lead to an increase of toxic blue-green algae and cause harmful algal blooms. Nearly half of the nation's rivers are deemed to be in poor biological condition, mostly due again to those excessive nutrients, but also due to sediment loading from things that are going on the land, the watershed. Nearly half of the shorelines of our nation's rivers are unhealthy or disturbed, which then further reduces the ability of them to control those nutrients and to control those sediments, and also increases the risk of flooding. Assessments of marine and Great Lakes coastlines indicated that just a slim majority, around 55%, were rated as having good water quality, but only 36%, were rated as having good biological characteristics, but only 36% of them actually had good water quality. So even though we think of issues with water quality, water infrastructure, and maybe water diversion and scarcity as problems that less developed countries face, in fact, these are global issues that all countries, including the United States, have to wrestle with. Partially to combat this, Illinois American Water has invested $1.6 billion in infrastructure improvements over the last 10 years. So now that we've set the stage for the concept that what you're doing in the home has that greater impact, let's take things back to the personal level. Even though water quality is a major global issue, the fact that our watersheds begin at home is why the little things that we do can collectively have a big impact, both negative and positive. And so for the rest of our time, we're going to focus on those little ways that our home life, specifically during the winter and holiday season, can impact our watersheds and water quality. Now, according to AAA, more than 113 million Americans traveled during the winter holidays in 2022. Maybe they were visiting family or friends. Maybe they were just getting away during what can be a fun but also stressful time. But when families gather and friends gather, we prepare big meals, we exchange gifts, and we share in each other's hospitality. And while it might seem trivial, a lot of our holiday gatherings can have a real impact on our water resources, because when we travel, we often forego some of the good habits that we have at home. So today, I want to dive in and talk about some really simple ways to make sure that your holidays are water smart. So we'll start by talking a bit about water quality and then move into ways that you can protect your homes from the effects of winter and holiday gatherings. So starting with water quality, a growing body of research has demonstrated that there's been increased detection of what we call contaminants of emerging concern, essentially pollutants, in our rivers, streams, and lakes, as well as in fish and shellfish and other organisms that live in those aquatic ecosystems. And the impacts of legacy contaminants like PCBs and mercury are really well documented, but the effects of most of these emerging chemicals are not fully known. Industry, agriculture, and development can put further stress on both water quality and availability. And cumulatively, all of these inputs can pollute streams, rivers, lakes, and the oceans, can overload water treatment systems, and lead to impaired water quality. So we're going to turn our attention for a bit to a few of these new emerging contaminants that you should be paying attention to, particularly during the holiday season. And that's unwanted medicines, pharmaceuticals, microplastics, and salts. So to start with, unwanted medicines. Now, when you're a guest in someone's home, I'm sure many of you have fought the urge, either successfully or unsuccessfully, to snoop in the medicine cabinet of your host. So here's your chance to make sure that your nosy aunt or uncle sees a safe and well-organized medicine cabinet when they go snooping. Take the time before the holidays to clean out your medicine cabinet and remove any expired or unwanted medications. Then find your local take-back program. These are often at your local pharmacy, at your local law enforcement office or municipal building, or there are semi-annual events that occur across the state as well. Dropping these unwanted medications off at a take-back program ensures that they will be disposed of in a manner that not only protects our water quality, but also ensures that these medicines don't cause unintended consequences like poisonings or abuse. Never pour medicine down the drain or flush medicines down the toilet, because the reality is that our wastewater treatment plants were not designed to remove pharmaceuticals. This is less of an issue for people because the amount of water we would need to consume to get even one therapeutic dose of a drug is really, really large. But aquatic animals spend their entire lives in the water and are exposed at much higher rates than people. Pharmaceuticals have been found to cause frogs to change sex, fish to stop avoiding predators, and even the near extinction of a bird species, among a whole host of other negative impacts. So proper disposal of medicine, never jumping it down the drain or flushing it, can help prevent these effects that can have really devastating impacts on aquatic ecosystems. You can visit our website, unwantedmeds.org, for more information. This website is a little bit dated, but we're currently working on a refresh and we'll be releasing a new site, hopefully by the end of the year. At unwantedmeds.org, you can link to resources that will help you find your local take-back medicine. But as long as you just remember never to flush, you're in good shape. So the next pollutant that I want to talk about are microplastics. Microplastics are small pieces of plastic, less than 5 millimeters in size, that contaminate rivers, lakes, and oceans. Here on this slide, you can see 4 different types. We have pellets, which is this little ball, fibers, there's one here and one here, foam right here, and fragments. Pellets are microplastics that are released in this particular form. They're small pieces of plastic that are used to create larger items made out of plastics. The other 3 here, fragments, foam, and fibers, tend to be released accidentally and break down from larger pieces of plastic into small pieces. Fragments, foam, and fibers. Fragments are often pieces of things like water bottles. Foam, smaller pieces of things like styrofoam coolers. And fibers often come from fleece jackets or other clothing or items, fabric items that are made out of non-biodegradable fibers. These microfibers are what we're really going to turn our attention to today. Microfibers come from a variety of sources: nylon, polyester, those microfiber cloths, and fleeces, and as well as carpets are some really big sources of these. If you swing your arms and the rubbing of your arms as they swing, or you walk on carpet, you're wearing away tiny fibers, and they're getting out into the environment. And unfortunately, these fibers are made of plastic. There are a lot of studies documenting the prevalence of microfibers in our environment. They really are everywhere. We know that they impact how aquatic organisms can eat, and we know that they can have negative impacts in aquatic ecosystems. As far as people go, there isn't really consensus on what that means for us. We know that they've been found in things that we consume: honey, seafood, bottled and tap water, and beer, to name just a few. And they've also been found in us. They've been found in our waste, in our bloodstream, and in our lung tissue. But the jury's really still out on what that means for us. So how can we help prevent our activities from creating more of these tiny pollutants? Well, I think the first step is to take care when cleaning fleece. This is Illinois. We have hard winters, fleece tends to be a part of a lot of people's winter wardrobes. And so I think the most important thing here is to be cognizant that when you wash fleece, little fibers are going to wear away. If possible, invest in a washing machine filter or washing bags. These washing machine filters, which are here and then more of a close-up here, act like a lint trap, essentially, for your wastewater from your washing machine, and it filters out all of the fibers, or most of the fibers, that would otherwise go to your wastewater treatment plants. Washing bag like this one that's called the Guppy Friend is a really lower budget and also just really simple idea. In these, you put your fleece and and synthetic clothing into the washing bags, wash them just like normal. They act just sort of like a delicates bag that you might already use. And the idea here is that it prevents these synthetic fibers, these synthetic articles of clothing, from rubbing against each other a lot and kind of cushions them a little bit so that less fibers wear off of these items of clothing. And then it also traps them. So you can take out your fleece and your other items of clothing and essentially wipe the microfibers out from the inside. Another tip is to vacuum carpets really well and carefully dispose of the dust. Most carpet is made of polypropylene and other types of plastic-based fibers. So if you vacuum your carpets really well, it cuts down on what wears away when your guests walk on your carpet. And lastly, and possibly most importantly, is to avoid serving bottled water. Research has shown that people consume up to and about 52,000 microplastic particles per year. Inhalation adds another 69,000 particles per year. But if you consume only bottled water, you're also adding an additional 90,000 particles per year, as opposed to only 4,000 if you only consume tap water. So a great way to cut down on your consumption and your exposure to microfibers and other microplastics is to avoid bottled water. So we're going to move on to our next pollutant, which is sidewalk salt. But I want to start this one with a question to test your knowledge. So we're going to put some choices up on your screen. And so please choose what you would consider to be the most appropriate answer. And it's okay if you get it wrong. We don't really care. We're using this as a learning tool. Now, for those of you that are viewing the recording, you're not going to see the pop-up on your screen. So I'll just give you a few more seconds here to answer. We have a neck and neck battle between half cup and coffee cup. Okay, so it looks like we're split pretty evenly between half cup and coffee cup, with some of you also thinking that it takes a quart or a gallon. But in fact, oops, I went too far. The answer is B, coffee cup. And we'll talk more about this and why this is as we move through this topic. So as snow and ice are melted, the dissolved salt is carried in the meltwater to local streams and lakes, or it infiltrates into groundwater. So the salt that you spread on your sidewalks, on your driveways, on your steps, ends up in the environment. This salt can remain on the landscape or in detention basins and storm sewers long after winter is over, and it can provide a constant source of salts to our local waterways every time it rains, well into the summer. The only way to reduce the impact of salt on the environment is to reduce the amount of salt that we use. Salt does not break down or degrade, and once it's in the water or the soil, it is both difficult and expensive to remove. So why do we care? What are some of the impacts? Well, first there's impacts on vegetation. On the landscape, we regularly see what's called salt burn on plants, shrubs, and trees along roadways and sidewalks. This is a classic picture here of salt burn on the bushes. Salt spray from passing cars can also damage vegetation that's well past the edge of the roadway. And it tends to be difficult to grow desirable plants in soil that has a high salt content. Problems with infrastructure. It's a pretty well-known fact, I would say, that cars from the snow belt rust out faster than cars from further south or west where the winters are warm. And this is because salt corrodes metal on vehicles. It also corrodes metal on bridges, causes concrete to pit, and damages entryways in buildings. I alluded to this already, but in the environment, salt harms fish, particularly fish in early developmental stages like eggs and juveniles. Macroinvertebrates, which are the bugs that live in our waterways and provide food for fish, freshwater mussels, and amphibians like frogs are also really adversely impacted by salt. And last, to tug at your heartstrings, are pets. Salt crystals and salty slush can adhere to pets' feet and cause irritation, soreness, and burning of the pads or skin. Salt can also be ingested when pets lick their paws or drink water outside that's contaminated with salt. And if they consume enough, it can lead to vomiting, diarrhea, or cause an unnaturally intense thirst. In extreme cases, pets could even die from salt poisoning. So as you have family this winter, you can help mitigate this by being salt smart with your application. So there are really 4 steps to being salt smart. The first is to shovel first. This is the #1 tip that we give people. Clear all snow from driveways and sidewalks before it turns to ice, and salt is even necessary. Putting salt on snow does not help. In addition, more salt does not mean more melting. A 12-ounce coffee cup of salt is enough for 500 square feet of driveway or about 10 sidewalk squares. This requires, however, that you distribute the salt evenly and not in clumps. Really spread it out. And the last tip is to switch. Rock salt, which is our most common sidewalk salt that we use, stops working if the temperature is below 15 degrees. So switch to a de-icer formula that's formulated for colder temperatures when it starts to get really, really cold. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and move from talking about how our actions can help protect water to how our actions can help protect your home. The next few slides will go over ways to prevent frozen, burst, and clogged pipes as you're gathering with family over the winter. So the first tip here is in the late fall and early winter, as cold temperatures take hold, make sure that you turn off and drain your irrigation systems. Don't leave any water in them because that water could freeze. Cover your outdoor spigots and drain and store hoses. Winterize your rain barrels. Hopefully you're all using rain barrels to gather rainwater and to water your plants. So you want to winterize that rain barrel. Drain it by opening up all the spigots. Once it's drained, turn it upside down if possible to empty it completely. The average rain barrel weighs about 500 pounds when it's full and needs to be fully drained before you try to move it. Remove hoses and the rain spout diverter and leave the faucets open. The hoses can split easily in cold weather and should be stored out of the elements until temperatures remain consistently above freezing. Replace your diverter with a flexible extension to redirect the downspout away from the house to avoid potential damage to the foundation from freezing water. Clear debris out from the barrel and the filter screen. An empty barrel is a good opportunity to clear out the muck that can lead to mold and fungus growth. And then store your rain barrel. If space is available in a garage or a basement, storing the barrel inside during winter months can help protect it from damage. But if it's left outside, you should cover it with a tarp or turn it upside down to prevent water from accumulating and freezing in the rain barrel. So in extreme temperatures, we also need to worry about burst pipes, right? So in extreme temperatures, let's let the faucet drip. Capture this water if you can and use it for watering indoor plants, pets, and other household uses. Open your cabinet doors to let warm air reach your pipes. Illinois American Water has some great tips to follow if your pipes do freeze. You can learn how to do this by either getting the website link from the chat or snapping a picture of the QR code with your phone. So if your in-home pipes freeze, you need to shut off the water immediately and not attempt to thaw them unless the water is shut off. Freezing can often cause unseen cracks in pipes and joints. Apply heat to the frozen pipe by warming the air around it. Use a hairdryer, a space heater, or hot water. But don't leave those space heaters unattended and avoid using kerosene heaters or open flames. Once your pipes are thawed, turn the water on slowly and check the pipes for cracks and leaks. You also want to prevent clogged pipes. As we gather, we cook large meals that can often generate fats, oils, and grease. Here we have probably a Thanksgiving turkey, and you can see all of the fat that's accumulated in the pan. Number one tip here is no dumping that grease down the drain. This is what happens if you dump the grease down the drain. That grease accumulates in our pipes. It hardens in the pipes and makes it very difficult for water to pass. Similarly, we want to cut down on food waste. This is a good tip year round, but particularly around the holidays when we're making lots of meals. Number one tip here is to plan the amount of food that you're going to make carefully. Compost any waste if possible, and try to use the garbage disposal sparingly so that you're not adding all of those nutrients into the water system. Illinois American Water also has great tips for fats, oils, and grease, or FOG disposal. Again, we'll drop the link into the chat, or you can snap a picture of the QR code to go to the link. And while it might not be fun to talk about, we know that holiday gatherings involve a lot of festive food and drinks, and that means a lot of bathroom breaks. So flushable wipes can often be found in our bathrooms, and I am here to tell you, just say no to flushable wipes. These might be flushable, but that doesn't mean that they're actually going to break down. Unfortunately, these wipes do not dissolve and accumulate in our water treatment centers. So up top here, we have an image of just a huge amount of undissolved wipes that were pulled from a water treatment center in New York. And down below, we have an image of what is typically called a fatberg that was released by the Macomb County Public Works Office. And this was found in a sewer line. These fatbergs are an accumulation of fats that people are dumping down their drains and these flushable wipes, and they're all clumping together and blocking sewer lines. So now that we've discussed how the winter and holiday season is a great time to brush up on some of the simple things that we can do at home or water-wise actions, let's revisit our question from earlier. Again, we're going to see several choices on the screen. Please choose what you think is the best answer. We'll give you a couple minutes to do it. Sorry, a couple seconds to do it, not minutes. So yeah, it looks like most of you got the answer right. The answer is B, coffee cup. And so that's great. And we're well prepared to wrap up here. So I want to end today by giving you all some simple actions that you can use to protect our water resources and your home during the holidays. And this is just a rehash of what we've just talked about. So first, winterize your pipes and outdoor watering equipment. Dispose of grease, oil, wipes, and unwanted medicines properly, not down the drain, not down the toilet. Wash your fleeces less often, spot clean them if possible. Salt sensibly, and help prevent food waste. So we'd love to know what practices you're likely to put into place within your own home or space. If you would, please take a few minutes to review the pop-up list on your screen and share with us what you might do on your own. And you can choose any of these that apply. Great. It looks like most of you have shared your thoughts, and it looks like a lot of you are going to use an idea from today to protect water, which is really the ultimate goal. And I'm really excited to see that. But putting cooled cooking grease and oil in the trash was number one. 16 of you are going to do that, and that's great to hear. So before we wrap up, I just want to make you aware of a great resource to help prevent wasted water. And we didn't talk about that today. That wasn't the topic of today's talk. But preventing wasted water is the easiest way to conserve our water resources. Illinois American Water has a leak detection kit that you can access here. You again, use the camera app on your phone to scan the QR code or follow the link in the chat. And this links directly to the guide where you can work through a step-by-step process to find leaks. The tool emphasizes areas outdoors where leaks can occur, like at outdoor faucets, within sprinkler systems, within pool systems, and at your service connection point. So it's good to do that before the winter starts. Thank you all so much for joining me this afternoon to learn more about preventing water pollution at home. And now I'll turn it over to Eliana to wrap things up.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you all for attending. If you have questions for Sarah, her email is on the screen and in the chat. If you'd like to delve further into information about water conservation, see Illinois American Water's page on wise water use. If you'd like to engage youth in this effort, check out our Youth Water Activity Book, which is a companion to this webinar series. Today's webinar has been recorded. You can see it and other webinars in this series on our YouTube playlist. You'll receive an email when this recording posts. We do ask that you take our 1-minute feedback survey to help us improve future programming. Thank you for attending today's webinar hosted by Illinois American Water. The next webinar in the Clean Water Conservation series will be over the winter. Look for an email from Illinois American Water to register. We hope to see you then. Thanks again and have a great holiday season.
Thank you for tuning into CU Wise TV. We hope you enjoyed the show. This video can be accessed anytime on youtube.com. In the YouTube search bar, type in UPTV6 and look for their microphone logo. We hope you will join us again next week for more local, engaging content designed specifically for Champaign